Forgive me, I'm going to start a little bit tongue-in-cheek, even though this is kind of a somber time and, quite frankly, probably one of the biggest foreign policy debacles of my lifetime and recent memory. But I do want to start with a little bit of levity, if it's all right. And so this is from the Tennessean, probably something Brandon's very familiar with. And this is a headline from back in October 13th of 2020. And it says, I served 15 years as general counsel of the Republican Party. Here's why I'm voting for Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a problem solver who will work with Republicans to address critical issues facing us during this time of unprecedented upheaval. All right. How we doing with that, guys?
Yeah, how'd that work out, right? Jeez.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem like that to me.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because this is one of those times where, and the right is guilty of this too, where we get to see right in front of us how active we're going to be about calling balls and strikes down the middle. For those who were very adamantly and emotionally opposed to Donald Trump, you have to ask yourself, where do you stand now about your vote, especially if your vote was predicated upon maybe a more emotional, which is a bunch of people that I heard, voting for Joe Biden because he was a stable force that wasn't going to be as active on Twitter as Donald Trump was. And, well, now we see the repercussions of using those kind of emotions to make very, very important decisions. So, obviously, I'll be the first to say that Trump wasn't perfect, and I hated his Twitter game probably just as much as the most, but it was funny at times as well.
But I mean, tweet every once in a while.
Yeah, it kept things a little spicy and interesting, but nonetheless, this is a time where we're starting to see that there may be room for reconsidering how adamant we were about making sure that Joe Biden was our president. So, what do you guys think, just generally about that, real quick?
I mean, are you better off now than you were, a few years ago? And the answer is across the board, no. Inflation's awful. Gas prices are up. We have an oil crisis. Things, and now Afghanistan. The reality is that things are not better. Take Democrat, Republican off of it. Let's just rip those titles off, and let's just look at things through the lens of how were they, 2019. 2020 obviously was a tough year with the pandemic, but let's look at, how things were then to now. And it's night and day. Yep. It's not a Republican thing. It's not a Democrat thing. It's a common sense thing. Things aren't better for your family, we are at a critical point in time for our country, and it's interesting the pattern of things, of how these are happening. It almost is eerily reminiscent of what led up to the 2016 election, if you really start to break things down. But I think we're at a critical point, especially not, obviously you don't want to politicize these things, but there will be elections coming, and it's interesting to see how this is going to play out, because the reality is, as a whole, we're not doing better. Across the board. And now you throw in Afghanistan, this tragic thing that happened today. And if you're watching it back, we just lost 12 servicemen, we believe, right now. But it's just a tragic time for our nation. We're certainly at a crossroads, because we went from leading from a position of strength to now we're kind of almost leading from a position of weakness or behind again. And now we're seeing the devastating consequences for it across the board.
Yeah, this is not a Republican or Democrat thing either, what I'm about to say. The one thing I keep on hearing is we're working closely with the Taliban, or the Taliban is allowing us to do this, or we're reliant upon the Taliban for this. And you'll hear here in a moment that the Taliban is actually checking every single person. The very first checkpoint you come to is a Taliban checkpoint at the Kabul airport before you can fly out.
Just to piggyback on that, I was just listening to a press conference from the Pentagon. I believe they had a general on, and he was talking about how they share their intelligence stripped down with the Taliban.
Yeah.
The problem is, though, there's actually been people coming out that are going on and, giving eyewitness accounts of how the Taliban is turning them away from the gates. They're literally breaking their phones. They're not letting them through. So it's not necessarily this rosy picture that we're getting. You're hearing one thing in the media and, kind of from the government that we're working great together, this is happening. But the reality is you're having witnesses come forward saying, well, they broke my phone, they wouldn't let me through for 3 days, we saw them beat women, and all kinds of things. So it's you're getting two different reports, and it almost feels like when you think about coming up on the anniversary of 9/11, that we're sitting here talking about working in tandem with the Taliban is just kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah. It's almost like we didn't learn our lesson.
You can catch brand new episodes of Indie Thinker with Reed Huberman every Monday, and weekly bonus episodes to keep you thinking throughout the week. But you have to subscribe and click the bell to be notified when new episodes drop. If you enjoy this content, make sure to like this video and share it with friends.